Welcome to this session on the meridian lines or the chi channels and the acupressure points, which are activation points along those lines which run through the body. This tool and this technology is not specifically open world. Its source, or at least my contact point for this information, is Dane Tomas's Clear Your Shit program and the spiral clearing modality, which I trained in. And it has become a really key part of my vocabulary and my understanding of my body. And I love the way it taps into Chinese medicine, brings in kinesiology, definitely anchored closely to the chakra system as well, these energy centers in the body. And it opens up a door into a line of inquiry, which I think is really valuable. And I think I'm definitely at the doorway, peering through. By no means really initiated into Chinese medicine, nor fully understand all of the capacity that these meridian lines have to affect our energy, our emotions, our hormones, all this physiological change which can happen. But I want to impart what I do know and also relate how I feel it relates to open world. So open world for me is a state. It's a condition to be in where you are open and you are ready. In order to get rid of story, a lot of the latent energy, emotions, charge needs to be cleared. And what I mean by cleared is integrated, harmonized with, released, redistributed, perhaps detoxed and gotten rid of, but ultimately not compartmentalized into these rigid anchors which prevent us from being fully fluid and fully responsive to the present moment. So that's why I think it's so key to be clear, to be open, to be in flow. Any system, I believe, needs a circulation to be alive, to be functioning. If you think of an economy, the money needs to flow. If you think of oxygen and blood, it needs to flow for us to be alive. In a relationship, the communication and love and attention and companionship needs to flow. Otherwise, we have stagnant waters, we have unspoken things, we have emotions which become like wrapped in a cyst. They become these pimples we need to pop. They just become, there's nothing wrong with the things in the stagnant water, all of the bacteria, all of the algae or whatever it is that is there is part of the living system. Our body is covered in bacteria and viruses, and we need good things in our guts. They sometimes call it gut gardening. So these living things, there's nothing wrong with them, but it's just the imbalance comes when things don't flow. So the tools I'm going to be talking about today help things to flow again. With acupuncture, if you've ever experienced that, a needle is actually placed into the body at specific points, which serves as like a pulse generator to send information and energy along these lines of the body, which enable function and connection and the different interreactions that are needed for one organ to talk to another or one system to exchange with another, for things that are locked or ridges in the flow line to be dissolved, redistributed, etc. So what we do when we are training with this particular chart, and I'm referring to the Clear Your Shit chart, which has the 5 elements and then a governing and central meridian. When we look at this chart, we use muscle testing to ask where the emotional anchor lies, what element, and therefore which organs, and therefore which emotions are really locked up in this area of trauma, or what is the pattern that we continually go to. If you could take an area, it could be shame or something like that, it could be love, whatever the theme is. Sometimes we have a particular personal association and therefore behavior pattern that links into that theme. So with this particular modality, what we're doing is we're asking ourselves in a very direct way, tapping into the body's wisdom, tapping into the innate knowing beyond the story, beyond the mental calculation and analysis of why things are happening or not happening, but into a deep-seated bodily knowing of where we are holding on to this emotional charge, which organs are really burdened with our toxic, because it's stagnant, reaction to this theme, this behavioral loop, which is not pertaining to the moment. It's pertaining to our subconscious automatic reactionary loop, which is just our default go-to. Oh yeah, here we are in this theme. This is how I, in my story of who I am based on the past, experience and react to the situation. So we ask the body very directly. And we go through this chart using muscle testing, which is a kinesiology method, which I'm not going to go into in detail in this session, but we use muscle testing for a yes or a no, for a hold or a break, to find, it's like a scanning system to see which of the elements hold the charge. So I'm going to briefly talk you through the different points now. I've got the chart just to the side, and I might put a reference to the chart in the links or something like that. Also encouraging you go to the source, which is clearyourshit.com. Check out Dane Tomas's work. You can buy the book as well on Amazon. Very affordable, and it's a great theory background to all I'm telling you here today. So essentially, when we're going to fire, we're looking at 4 elements: small intestine, heart, triple warmer, and circulation, sex. If you want to know more about triple warmer, look at Chinese medicine, this idea of like the fascia in the body. It helps all of the fluids move through the body, make sure that the organs can move independently. And links to circulation, sex, I mean, it's around, I believe it's called the pericardium, around the heart. Helping all of that emotion and energy to also link down into our sexuality. So if you like to think of it bluntly, it's connecting love to sex. And with the small intestine and with the heart, there is this fire, there is this passion, there is this also vulnerability, all these things which are caught up in this space. And when we find that there is a break or a emotional charge in this area, we deal with this area here under the ribs. You can rub just with your hands like this, under the ribs coming up towards the solar plexus and sternum. And with all of these techniques, we're not trying to repel or get rid of an emotion. Instead, we're really just wanting to feel it and stimulate, activate, be present with. And by activating these points, we are sending these signals along this whole system. Now, these lines, these meridian channels, run through the whole body. So if we pick a particular point to rub on our body, that is just one line on a whole train track. If you want to research further, it could also be useful to, massage the entire line or really get intuitively into where all of the energy is going. But I'm really just going to impart the teaching I've received through doing the spiral practitioner training and hopefully acquaint you with the simple go-to click button response. And, Dane's always encouraging us to understand that intention has so much to do with it. You're in this session, yourself and the client, or if you're doing this on yourself, you are with your body and you're going, cool, so I'm linking into my lungs here, or I'm linking to my kidneys, feeling into that, having the intention we're going to clear this particular emotion. And so that through line of intention will also add to the efficacy, the efficiency, the power of the process as we start to align the different parts, the mind, the emotion, the energy, the body, all these kind of things. So that's as simple as it is for the fire, simply rubbing under the ribs, coming up to the solar plexus and feeling into whatever emotion has come up in this particular scan. The next one is earth. So that relates to the spleen and to the stomach. Once again, the line goes all throughout the body, but the point that we reference when doing this particular form of clearing, this modality, is to come down on the left-hand side of the body, feeling between the 2 lowest hanging ribs, rubbing in between there. And I really encourage the personal acquaintance with the body, feeling where it really targets for you. And sometimes a certain point will be very tender and a lot of feeling. Other times, not much. But of course, that relates to if there is, dis-ease, if there is unhealth, if there is emotional stagnancy and something being held there. And this is like a workout for the central nervous system. So you can overload this process. You can do too much clearing. You can get sort of fried. And with open world, I believe that's a core part of the training, is to develop a physiology, particularly around the central nervous system, where we are used to sending a lot of signals through. And there is a certain endurance and stamina and capacity that is developed. It's like doing breath work. A lot of breathing in and out. If you're a deep sea diver, you've got an expanded lung capacity. But if you just learn, or playing a wind instrument, the trumpet, you might get lightheaded, or didgeridoo, you almost faint after playing it for a while. That's just developing your capacity. Similar with emotions, if you've been sheltered from the brute force of a loved one dying or emotional heartbreak or whatever it is, it can really fry you. But I could imagine that if you worked in a medical field, like as an ambulance driver or something like that, your window of tolerance would increase. Your capacity to hold really intense moments would improve as your central nervous system, your organs, all this sort of stuff learns how to have a big charge go through, a big shock, a big moment. If you're a fighter, or a football player, how to take a tackle and come back to that balance kind of state. So, coming back to the chart, continuing on, we are developing this capacity. Don't overdo it with yourself too much. Just take it easy and acquaint yourself with the points. And then when you get more familiar with the chart, you can really use it as more of a laser precision tool. You just sort of activate the areas that need. You don't always go through the whole body and activate everything. It's like, well, where is the stagnancy? Everything's flowing. Cool. I don't need to turn the tap on through an open channel. I just want to turn the tap on to open up and dislodge whatever's blocking the plumbing. So that's the earth is for the spleen and stomach, left-hand side. Then we go down around the chart to metal. And this has two aspects, which is lung and large intestine. The lung points, if you just come to feeling the chest to the outer side, I use my thumbs. And of course with lungs, breath is good as well. And once again, intention, rubbing these points here on the outside of the chest, activating the lung points for metal. And the other part is the large intestine. So this is coming into the hand in between the thumb and index finger, this fleshy part of the palm, rubbing that. Could be on either hand. This is not recommended for women who are pregnant because it's to do with letting go, with early release, with detoxing the body, getting rid of things. So obviously with pregnancy, holding on to full term is important for the baby's health. So only do this if you're not pregnant. But this is a really great point to release. And I think as you get familiar with the chart and as you look at all the different emotions attached to the elements and organs, they have a certain characteristic or quality. So for me, looking at fire, it's got a lot of fire. It's got a lot of passion. I'm reading through it now, like love, joy. There's also some overexcitement. There can be buoyancy. There can also be muddled instability. So that fire, sometimes it can activate, but it can also sort of be a bit chaotic. Receptivity, arousal, responsibility, desire, hysteria. So it's kind of got a flavor. When you look at earth, you've got something that feels a little bit more heavy as earth is compared to fire. So low self-esteem, worry, criticism, disgust is a big one that often comes up there, disappointment, greed. So you can feel kind of how that feels compared to the fire. Looking at metal, I'm just thinking that clanging, kind of hard sort of feeling, grief, guilt, regret, and also letting go, which is why these elimination systems of the lungs and large intestine are so important. Self-worth, hanging on, dogma, guilt, kind of pretty abrasive kind of things. Moving around from there, we've got water. And so when you think of water, what do you think of? There's all this emotion, there's this droopiness. So looking at the bladder and kidneys, which directly relate to water in the body. Pissed off, paralyzed will, anxiety, sexual insecurity, creative insecurity, disloyalty, bad memory, So hopefully the flavors and characteristics are starting to feel relevant to the particular elements. So with water, we've got the 2 points. Bladder point, pretty straightforward. Just coming to the pubic bone here. My signs are attacking me. You just come to the pubic bone directly in the center line of the body and come just up to the soft part of the pelvis, just above the pubic bone. Just rubbing that point there for the bladder. And then for the kidney points, we're following the collarbones down and just pressing, a couple centimeters apart in the center of the chest under the collarbones, once again in tension. There's also a chart that goes along with this elemental chart, which shows a man with the actual points on his anatomy. So that's also really good to reference as well. Moving on from water, we've got wood, which is the gallbladder and liver. So this is on the right-hand side, coming around under the pec or breast, following that line in between the ribs on the side here. Once again, feeling in between the ribs where it feels nice and activating. Hiya! Tender. So for me, if I think of wood, I think of pre-fire. Wood burns and becomes fire, but it's not released yet. It's got the frustration, the anger, transformation, distress, vengefulness, jealousy, helplessness as well, forbearance, self-righteousness, etc. So, breath, sound, and movement can help really allowing yourself to feel these emotions. Once again, not trying to get rid of them, just welcoming them, really allowing yourself to feel what's there, and that naturally tends to dissipate and integrate and release. Now, those are the 5 elements. So you've got fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. But then there are 2, well, kind of like one big connected circuit in the body coming up, over, and around and down. If you do microcosmic orbit breath or research that links into this area. And for me, this is my interpretation, it feels like the governing meridian links into the spiritual element, and then the central meridian continuing on from that links into our humanity. So that's why I feel this line is so pivotal and important. It's kind of like the correlation and relationship between our divinity and our humanness, between what's beyond the body and what's very of the body. So the central meridian starts here below the mouth, coming down through all of these vital organs. And if you research about the vagus nerve as well, sort of plugging into the back of the face, coming down through here, controlling a lot of our fight or flight. And when you look at the emotions, there's self-respect, confidence, but also overwhelm, vulnerability, and support. So, very self. It's about you. Do I have the support that I need? Am I vulnerable? Also having peace, but there's overwhelm, shyness, confidence, all these kind of human experiences. So it's coming down and continues down the bladder, wrapping around under the perineum, and kind of coming very close to the start of the governing meridian, which starts at the tailbone. So if you just rub the base of your tailbone, that's going to come up here over the crown, coming down to end at the gums, so just above the top lip and nose, rubbing that point. So you can sort of see how it's almost like the mouth and the anus could be like the connection points to link these two. So you've got here governing, and then central, around. And you can really imagine with the microcosmic orbit breath as you breathe through this, squeezing up, releasing down, and just playing with the flow of energy, the flow of fluids, the flow of chi, prana, life force, kundalini, whatever it is. All of these ways we have sensation and connection. When you look at Joe Dispenza's work, which I quote a few times, I really just like the way he balances between the Eastern and the Western. He looks at the neuroscience and the way that we can actually have the cerebrospinal fluid going up and down. We can activate massage and stimulate the shifting of fluids. Massage being so key. I love acupressure because it's an aspect of massage, but it's very specific, and it's not just about a muscular line, but into these energetic lines which relate to so many different organs and really help holistic circulation, which is why I'm really passionate about it. So when we look at this is relating to a very specific modality, to Dane Tomas's spiral clearing technique. It's like a road map to releasing a lot of the human emotions and story-based reactions, habitual loops to themes in our life, so that we can just be open up and a fully responsive feeling human, or maybe post-human, superhuman. So when I plug into this and use this, it's really a doorway into inquiry, realizing that the inner realm is this really intricate system of organs, of lines, that the nervous system, of the fascia, which is this membrane, connecting and allowing movement and holding things together. There's also a really exciting concept. What is it in? Piezoelectricity or something like that. It's in the fascia. There are these things. I'm not sure if it's the cytoplasm or what it is, but there are these like helix formations, these 3 strands in this jelly-like membrane that's holding all our organs, and they can create electricity when they move. I guess a bit like one of those glow sticks. You crack them and then they glow. And so it's in the movement that the electrical signals are actually being activated and generated. And then one theory is that the meridian channels are actually the channels between these, it's a membrane surface, but they're wrapping these organs. So it's kind of in between everything. There are these lines of flow of fluid, redistribution of everything in the fluid to feed back into our circulatory system, but also potentially energy. And if you look at the yogic idea of prana, of breath, that links into this concept of these spiral kundalini holdings of energy in our body, which we ultimately want to release and free and benefit from all this energy in our body, and ultimately leading back to spirit itself. Of course, there's so much conceptual mental attachment to words. What is spirit? What is soul? What is mind? What is brain? Don't want to go into all that, the taxonomy and etymologies of words right now. Regardless, to say breath is important, energy is important, whether it's the soul itself or whether it's just a life force that we as a conscious point can experience, and also having that life force. This is my experience anyway. When we have the life force, the consciousness can be more present in the body. When I go for long periods without eating sugar, I feel that the lethargy and the sleepiness and therefore the detachment from the present moment lessens. Because if I'm not as sleepy, if I'm more present, it's like I come forward in my body, I'm present, I'm clear. And so therefore it makes sense to me that the life force links to spirituality. I don't know if the life force is the spirit. I believe that the spirit itself is just kind of external or exterior to the matter, that is the atoms and the meat of ourselves, but they're definitely intrinsically linked. So yeah, let's be full of life. Let's be present. Let's explore our body on the inside. And that inquiry can come through massage, and come through pressing these points. It can come through going through charts, looking at the meridian lines and really activating the whole line. It can come through just emotional awareness and feeling what's there and really allowing the natural response to play out. We know if we want to lie down, we know if we want to stretch, we know if we need to pulse that breath. I believe it's the human desire to control, to come across in a certain way. It's a contrivance or an artificial representation, a posture, a pose. We want to be perceived as a certain thing, but so many of those artificial effigies of the perfect person, this fantasy of how you should be, are a detachment or a step away from the natural state. And I really want to naturalize or normalize the human being's true response to life. Making sound, breathing differently, stretching out. I find that the elimination system, I know one time I had this sort of pain in my hip. I tore something, whatever it was, and my body just wanted to get rid of stuff, like diarrhea, just get rid of stuff. That's just like a natural response. I don't know if it related to the injury in my hip or not, but there's some kind of communication in my body which like, we need to clear this channel. If you want to sweat, or definitely with women through menstruation, to bleed and to shed the uterine layer, these things are so pivotal to balance. And yet we as human beings clog, block, hold, restrict, hide shamefully all these really natural flow systems, causing a stagnancy, causing this artificial bloating in our bodies and in our life force. So the point of this whole video is to give you some pointers on where you can link in, rubbing the body, thinking of your organs, feeling after a meal. Are you aching? Feeling before you eat. What do you really feel like eating? Allowing yourself to fast, allowing yourself to breathe, to cry, to sing, and feel the extra sensation that happens in your periphery or in your internal organs. You start to become really aware of your bladder or your bowels, your large intestine, your stomach, your lungs, your heart, your brain. These things which seem so out of reach become actually connected when we start to allow circulation to go there. I mean, a really simple example is when you cut off circulation to your arm, you sleep on it too long or whatever it is, you can't feel. It becomes big and fuzzy and numb. So it makes sense that if we're not really allowing the meridian channels to be flushed, if we're not really moving the fascia, if we're not connecting in, we're going to become disconnected because there's not as much communication happening between us and our organs. So explore your body, inquire with sentience, find your own way to integrate these systems. Have this as, like I said, as a doorway to peer through. If you want, please, research Clear Shit with Dane Tomas and Spiral Process. But with Open World embodiment practice and the rewilding, it's really just about allowing. It's about breath, sound, and movement being used intuitively, not just to act out and dramatize all of the archetypes, all of the emotions that are possible. That can be good just to show our flexibility and fluidity. And it can be used also to train up the capacity to have a lot of charge and emotion and wild experience. But in day-to-day living, it's just knowing when there's a block. You're going about your day and there's an interaction with a person, or there's a decision you make and an action you take, or there's something you eat or something you wear, or something comes into your environment, music or a chemical in the air. And through regular training, you know what it feels like to be in flow. You know what it's like when things are activated and aligned. You know what it's like when you're just boom, just like everything's talking to itself. You're feeling, you're allowing, and suddenly, what the hell's that? Oh, it's in my heart. You just go straight to it. Just go into the fire. You know what you kind of had a little. It's like when you have you pull a muscle, or you have a spasm or a contraction or a twist. It seizes up. You feel that in clear disparity to your usual openness. And that's where you can dig straight in, get the acupressure point, feel the emotion, naturally and intuitively scan. What is the foreign body? What is the alien response? What is the socially programmed norm that is very foreign to your innate desire to respond to life? To be angry, to say hey no, or to come into your vulnerable heart and express how much you love and appreciate someone, or to feel, I feel really insecure right now. And just feel it, not having to come across with all the bravado of whatever you want to be it, seeming to be. Realness. So hopefully that was useful. Look at the charts, feel in and do your own learning with your body, and be aware of the flows, because it's really cool in a jungle that's always pulsating. Like there's that quote about if no one heard the tree fall in the forest, did it really fall? But I believe that those jungles and those forests, they're always thriving, and they don't always require our conscious awareness. I think our subconscious awareness is plugging into all these systems, and our hearts keep beating and our digestion keeps happening. But the jungle will keep pulsing regardless. So we can live just from our heads and completely ignore our body. And the body is beautiful. It's still going to keep going. The blood's going to keep pumping. You keep urinating every morning. It's like, yeah, we're just going to keep going even if you ignore us. But oh, the blossoming of that ecosystem when we can consciously tap in and make it an intentional way of living, a conscious way of living, to conduct and to respond and be a part of the wilderness of our body, and for our body to be a part of nature, to be this extended continuation of the forest outside of us, of the water we swim in, of the earth we walk on, of the air that we breathe. And that's the dance.